Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. I'm your host, Marcus Engel, and this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Today, I have not one, but two special guests with me. Let's start with Erin, ladies first today. Erin Hart, you are with the Ohio Healthcare Association. Can you tell us a little bit about your position with the organization?
Sure. I'm the strategy director for OHCA, which means I do a lot of odds and ends, mostly strategic planning as part of my job, but I also do a lot of workforce development. I help our members, which is an array of long-term and post-acute care providers in Ohio, with various issues like billing and reimbursement and policy. And I also do government relations. So it's a smattering of things, really.
You wear a lot of hats there, don't you? As it happens these days in lots of organizations where you're taking on multiple duties. So thank you for that. And then my second guest today is Peter Murphy Lewis. And Peter, I'm so excited to get to talk to you. I've watched some of your documentaries online, and thank you for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your work?
Yeah, I am honored to be here, especially with Erin. I kind of wear three hats. First hat, I'm a dad of an 8-year-old, married to a beautiful woman. I live in a zoo in the middle of the United States. The second hat that kind of pays the bills is I'm a fractional chief marketing officer. So that means I'm a marketing consultant. But what I love doing is the work that I do with Erin, which is telling people's stories in the healthcare space. And we created a documentary together with Nebraska and Ohio and now a couple other states called People Worth Caring About, where we tell the story of caregivers.
And specifically caregivers in long-term care, right?
Yes.
That's what we're looking at. And so this is an area that I've been able to work with actually probably some members of your organization before, Erin. And so I know this space a little bit, although I tend to work a lot more in acute care. But I think all of us have probably had an experience of a family member or relative or friend going into a long-term care facility and what that was like for them. There's a lot of misconceptions around long-term care. And I guess whenever you guys were talking about making this project, it was specifically to highlight the caregivers in these types of facilities. And I feel like they are the unsung heroes of our whole healthcare ecosystem in this country. So why did you decide to highlight them when seems like so often when we think of nurses, it's right out of an acute care setting, right?
Yeah, I think, in long-term care, more than probably any other healthcare setting, I started out in the hospital world myself. The actual caregiver or CNA, certified nursing assistants here in Ohio now, they are the ones who have probably 75 to 80% of the hands-on one-on-one interaction with our residents every day. So when you're thinking about the care that somebody receives in long-term care, these are the people actually doing that work. The nurses in long-term care are doing a lot of medication administration. The LPNs do a lot of direct caregiving in Ohio. In our state, we do employ a lot of licensed practical nurses. But then the RNs are mostly administrative. They're the director of nursing. They're the ones doing the assessments on patients. They're not actually like providing the care in most circumstances, unlike in a hospital where that's flipped a little bit. So we really wanted to talk about those people who care for our elders and people with disabilities every single day and build these relationships with them because there are so many really beautiful, amazing stories that don't get told. A lot of times the stories that we hear are the really bad ones. And that is actually just a very small percentage of what actually happens in our industry.
Peter, whenever I was watching the episode with the Manor in Ohio, you highlighted a nurse there, just kind of like Erin is talking about, who is doing med pass and forming relationships, and you showed some really beautiful relationships being formed through compassion and presence and understanding. Any of those specifically that you'd like to highlight that you came across, whether it was at the manor or in your other visits to long-term care facilities?
There's there from the manner. There's kind of three things that came to mind when you were describing that. One is the kind of the big personality of Dee, the nurse there, and how important she is. She a survivor of cancer. When she was going through chemo, I believe the only day she missed a day of work was the day she had chemo. Uh, and that just makes me think about how much she loves the seniors and her staff, and how that's a part of her family. You know, I always take pride. I tell my wife and I tell my son, I don't think I ever missed a day. I don't think I ever missed a class in college, but that was because I was a nerd and I was competitive, not because I cared for somebody. Right. And I didn't have cancer. I didn't go through chemo. So, like she takes it to another level and at a human level. And that's really, really beautiful. And she's a person whose face is across the billboards of Ohio. The second item is a beautiful woman who is now in memory care, and she was in CNA, and she had some back problems, and over time, she thought she was going to have to quit taking care of America's seniors, and they found a place for her to take care of. To fill in a new role, which is memory care. And then lastly, I think I would just say that the dancing with the people at the end with live music.
Mm. Yeah, we know the power of music and the power of music therapy and just joy,
Mm.
right? Joy is not something I think that most people would immediately would jump to their mind whenever you think about long-term care, but you're seeing it there. One of the things that I thought of when you were talking, Dee was her name, is that correct?
Yep, Deanne.
Deanne, whenever she was talking, she's the LPN. She said that whenever she started out, I think as a CNA, and then went to LPN, and she said she decided she didn't want to go any further. That is exactly where she wanted to be, with these people, with these relationships. And when you're talking about the cancer diagnosis, I think when we're connected to our purpose, boy, that's whenever we are living true to ourselves, and you're certainly highlighting those types of individuals that are living their purpose, and I love that. And any kind of surprises that came out of this work, Erin? You're obviously a little more entrenched in the long term care world. Were there
Yeah,
any surprises that came up during
yeah,
the
I don't know if I was surprised personally because before joining the association, I worked in long-term care, so I'm pretty well informed of what's happening. But I think a lot of people who maybe don't know anything about long-term care would be surprised by the Super Bowl party.
Mm,
There's one episode up in Cleveland that we shot on the day of the Super Bowl, and it's a sore subject for Peter because his team lost. But um, the residents were dancing, they were playing games, they were drinking beers. Like these are the
mm,
things that are happening in long-term care, and they were doing it with their caregivers. So the food service manager who we were talking with, and then the floor supervisor, who was herself 72, were out there dancing with them and pouring their drinks, and they were having a good old time. And I think that that's probably not at all what people think happens in nursing facilities, but it is what happens. In the organization I used to work for, our most popular facilities were the ones who had pubs.
mm.
So, you continue to live and live a fulfilling life even after you lose the ability to care for yourself. And that's kind of what long-term care can provide for people. And I'm really glad that we were able to show that side of it.
Again, like I was saying earlier, joy is not something I think most people think of whenever you think nursing facility, but yet joy is part of life.
Mm.
and this is the residence, that's their life, that's their home, and that's
Yeah.
their community and people. And so I love to hear that there's joyful things happening.
Mark,
Yeah, go ahead,
while you
Peter. I was going
may,
to ask you that same
yeah,
question.
I have a couple of surprises because I haven't spent as many years or hours taking care of America's seniors like Erin. There was a surprise when we were filming the very first day at Ohio Manor in Ripley. And Erin, if I get some of the names wrong, please help because you know I'm pretty dyslexic. But we were decorating Valentine's Day trees, and there was a woman kind of walking around and helping, and she had moved in recently, and she was referring to one of the older residents as her very best friend and her sister, and saying how much she loved her. And when she had a moment, she took me aside, and I don't think this actually made it on camera, but she came over to me and she said, you know, I didn't want to come here. I'm from Kentucky. You know, I didn't think these were my people. I didn't think I was good. I thought that this was coming here to die. And she said, this is the only place that I would ever want to live. And, and she said, this is my home. And I'd heard that before. It's the passion and the way that she said it. And then she said the following: this is where people love me. And well, it makes me tear up on a Monday. You're not supposed to start off
Yeah.
Mondays. They're supposed to be intense and painful. And this was, it was, I still remember her face. And if I ever go back, she'd be the first person I would go and hug, just because I think she says so well what we need to explain to everyone who is afraid to go into a nursing home, who wants to find a meaningful job, and for the journalists and politicians who only focus on the bad. Um, and another beautiful story, and this goes back to the manor in Perrysburg. There was a woman who was kind of in charge. She was kind of in charge of the main lobby. I'm from Kansas, so when you grow up in a small town, the place you hang out when you're in high school is the Sonic, and you just kind of drive around the Sonic, and everyone sits on their hood and talks to each other. Well, the manor has this kind of center lobby where everyone hangs out, and it forces everyone to say hi, and it keeps you extremely social. And she was one of the people who helped create the store. And they had a resident run store. And she, you know, she said, I love this place so much, I brought my entire family. Now, if you stop there or you interrupt or you turn to someone else, you'd be like, oh yeah, she's talking to, you know, about her friends. No, I think she brought her daughter and like 4 or 5 granddaughters who were all working there. Talk about recruitment, right? She loves this place so much, and she knows that it's so amazing. She wants her amazing family to give the same love to her friends and residents in the hallway now that she received, and she wants her family to receive the same win-win that she gets from living in long-term care. Like, I mean, blows my mind. Like,
Yeah.
if my parents went to a nursing home and then recruited all of my nieces and nephews, that's a cool story.
That really is. And you guys say that the videos are now being used as recruitment tools too, right? Do you have some whether it's case studies or anecdotal evidence? I mean, you just gave me a great story right there. Do you have others?
Oh yeah. One of the facilities that we filmed in, Welcome Nursing Home, their motto is families taking care of families, because it's literally been run by the same family for several generations. And they have mothers and their sister, so like 2 sisters, and then their children all working in one facility. And there's multiple iterations of that throughout the building where you have like entire families working there, which is why they came up with this motto. And then they bring their parents there. Like the woman who was featured in that episode, June, she had known the administrator and owner since she was a little girl too. And when she could no longer take care of herself at home, she knew exactly where she was going. So there are so many stories like that in long-term care, where you have like whole families working in a building or with an organization, because that is just kind of how it works. And you'll often hear kind of throughout all the episodes, people say things like, I was only going to stay for a week, or I was only going to stay for a month, or this wasn't my plan originally. And then it's 35 years later. Because once people come and they see what it's actually like, they stay a really long time. Our workforce committee is working on kind of, I'll call them workbooks, that they're going to start using to go out to talk to high school students and use with the episodes to say, this is what it's actually like working in long-term care. And have you ever thought about working in this kind of setting? Because, I think the more people understand what it is like, the better chance we have of recruiting a new kind of generation of workforce.
Marcus,
Yeah, go ahead.
Erin's going to want to throw her chair through the screen at me because she's heard me share this story too many times. So I, at the beginning, like my dream was that kind of people worth caring about would help with staffing. And I think Erin just gave the example we're working on, but there's some stories of people who are doing it before us, and we're just using this to kind of maximize or give them a bigger platform. The story that I think I've shared the most from Ohio is two sisters, and they are sisters who work at Covenant, just on the outskirts of Cincinnati. And the sisters are Katie and Mary. They're both probably 24 and 27 years old, younger than 30. They could be my kids. And a year and a half ago, they were slinging hoagies at Subway footlongs for the $6.99 footlong deal of the day. And some brilliant, smart person from Covenant said, these girls have a heart, and while sandwiches are important and I like my footlong, they said they can do even more work in taking care of America's seniors. And I don't remember which one was recruited first, but one got in, started working as activities assistant. Then they recruited the other sister. Now they both do it. And that episode is really, really special. There's tears. I get kissed with a sloppy kiss on the ear. We meet Myra. We paint nails. We play Cupid. That is just really, really, really cool, because while Erin and I want this to, help out with recruiting, having a story of Mary and Katie who absolutely love long-term care, and they said they will never leave this industry until they're fired or they move into one, like that is special. We can't make up stories. We just have to find them. And we found that one, pretty accidental, because that came up last minute. Erin had to handle a curveball where one of our days of filming had to be canceled because of a COVID outbreak. And within 12 hours, she found Covenant. And within 2 hours, we were filming with two sisters that we didn't know we were going to film with the day before.
I imagine stories like that just abound.
Yeah.
That's great. Taking care of those. I just want to touch on how great it is to be able to spot talent, whether it's at Subway or, sitting next to you on an airplane or something. Whenever you can spot somebody that's got talent or heart, as you described it, bringing them into this caregiving ethos is, I love doing that. I love helping people find what's their calling.
Yeah, I think a lot of our caregivers in our industry were caregivers at home first. So they were taking care of their grandparent or their parent or their children, and they found that it's something that they love to do. And then they come and caregive for their job as well. So they're caregiving on both ends, burning the wick at both ends, as they say, which is really hard. That's a really hard thing to do, to caregive 24 hours a day. But the people who really love it and get a lot of fulfillment and joy from it, from their stories and their words, it doesn't seem like it's that as taxing as you might imagine, because it is so fulfilling.
I often hear the nurses say, it's not what I do, it's who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's who I am. This is my purpose. This is my mission. And finding people like that who have found their mission and their calling is a really beautiful thing. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit. I think you both know probably that I'm an adjunct at Notre Dame, and I have at the beginning of every semester with these pre-meds that I work with, I pose them the question, their first writing assignment of the semester is to share a story about a time that someone was there for you or that you were there for another person, just really highlighting that human compassion and connection. And I'd love to hear your stories if it's a time that somebody was there for you or that you were there for another person. Erin, I know that you shared a little bit about, I believe it was your grandmother. Is that right?
Yeah, my grandmother, I love my grandma so much.
Mm.
I grew up across the street from my grandma, and I had the blessing of being able to see her whenever I wanted because she was retired, and I would just go over and she'd make me cookies, or we'd pull rhubarb out of the ground and dip it in a sugar bowl. And I spent a lot of time with her. And several years ago, my grandma developed Lewy body dementia, which is a very, very aggressive form of dementia that encompasses hallucinations. She called me up and she said, "Your daddy's sitting here and he's about 8 years old at my kitchen table." And I said, "Oh no, that's not him." So when she developed Lewy body, it was very difficult for my dad and his sisters to understand that she needed to be in long-term care. She was not safe in her condo. She could not be left with a stove, for example, and she was hallucinating. So it was very, very difficult for them. But we spent a lot of time talking about it and kind of dispelling some of the myths, and found a really wonderful assisted living memory care facility locally where we lived, which is kind of a rural place and hard to find. Um, but we moved her in there and she lived for 6 more months. Very happy and well cared for. Everybody loved her. She's like the definition of a sweet old lady. She called everybody honey, and, always talked about making them cookies, even though she didn't have a kitchen anymore. But then when the next transition came and she developed pneumonia, we talked about hospice, and my dad, he couldn't do it. He couldn't make the decision to put her on hospice. So I helped my aunts with that, and I held her hand and I helped them understand, even though she doesn't know who you are, you're here. Um, and I'm just glad I was able to do that for her after everything that she had done for me as a child, and all the memories that she gave me and care that she gave to me. She inspired my entire existence and career in long-term care. I just have so much love and appreciation for her that it felt really fulfilling to be able to help her with her final transition in life.
Thank you for sharing that, and I apologize and I'm sorry for your loss. There's really nothing. I think that uh, it's hard to imagine something worse than Lewy body, right? It's something no one would wish on their worst enemy. And listeners, if you're not familiar with Lewy body, it's probably a good thing because you certainly don't want to end up a Lewy body patient. But that presence that you've shown her during her diagnosis and transition, that's that's what life is all about, right? It's that love of two human beings. Thank you so much for sharing that, Erin. Um, and Peter, did you have a story?
It's I do, not family, and I think it impacted who I am today. Erin's heard a piece of it because I share it in my keynote when I'm talking about how I've done 100 different jobs and why long-term care is one of the most impactful. My one of my first jobs, kind of a salary, sitting down and have meetings and bosses out of college, was working as a HIV/AIDS caseworker in the Boston area, and I had a client from Kenya who we would meet in kind of anonymous settings, and I would help him with casework, help him with whether it be food stamps or mattresses or rent or getting a job. And I did not realize that I was important to him. I felt like I was doing something that he needed, not appreciated, until he passed. And he passed eventually because of tuberculosis, which 10 years later, I was hospitalized, and the doctors thought that I got tuberculosis from him. I developed a tumor, my colon, um, and but what was impactful about that story of me helping him, silently in the dark for quite some time, is I knew that he had family, but I had always thought that he'd never talked about me to anybody else. So when he passed and I didn't make it to see him in time at the hospital, I thought I'd never hear from him again. I thought I would finish up his file and close it out and say my goodbyes on my own. And I got a call from his wife and went and met his son, and said goodbye to them. And they told me how important I was to him, and like I didn't know that they knew about me. And since then, that's kind of changed how I think about. Sometimes you work in the dark, and sometimes you get thanked, and sometimes you don't. But it's every time you don't, you still remember the one time you did, and it's impactful.
And you never know the impact that you are making on another person.
Mm-hmm.
You can never fully comprehend that, because we can't live in someone else's skin. We can practice as much empathy as we can, but we can't live in someone else's skin with their experiences and their personality and their makeup, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, just again, it's being there, right? It's being there for another person. That's really great. I want to give you guys opportunities to, and we'll put this in the show notes too, but to share where people can learn more about the projects that you're doing for long-term care, or uh, even if a listener out there is now interested in long-term care, where would you suggest that they start?
I would say, there's a trove of information on caregiving jobs in long-term care. Our National Association, HC Engel, has a ton of information on careers in caring, which is their website. Our site, ohca.org, we also have various workforce initiative pages, including one on people worth caring about, talking about, how do you get started in long-term care, job openings, people you can talk to learn more about working in long-term care, and then just watching the videos to kind of see what it's like and why people who have worked there for 35 years have done that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there are a lot of resources out there for people, no matter where you are, whether you're in Ohio or California or wherever. Every state has a state healthcare association representing long-term care providers and have a lot of information on how to get started.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Um, Peter, any other works that you'd like to highlight?
I would just piggyback what Erin said. Go watch the episode of the two sisters, Katie and Mary, on YouTube in Covenant Village. It'll show you that it's a place worth considering, because you can smile and you can laugh and you can cry out of joy. And I think that it might be the only place that you can impact somebody's life every single day, right? It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's not taking anything away from police officers or elementary educators. 7 days a week, 24 hours away a day, you can make somebody smile. You can make the last 10 years, 30 years, or 1 month of their life better, and it'll make yours better as well. And haven't shared this with Erin yet, so I'll get to see her reaction. But as of this week, you can voice search on any smart TV people worth caring about, and you will find the first season of the documentary on your smart TV on Amazon and so forth. That just happened in the last couple of days. So we're excited. The season with Ohio, we are now applying to get it on Netflix, and we should know that in the next 6 to 9 months.
Oh, good luck with that. Good luck with that. Yeah, highlight bigger audience for this very special work. So, well, thank you both so much for spending some time with me and sharing about this project and about your work. I love what you're doing. Love what you're doing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I have
Yeah.
one follow-up thing. Marcus, your
Yeah,
voice is
please.
so amazing and so smoothing. I wish I could give you a virtual hug. Every podcaster in the world should kind of listen to your flow. You're great at this.
Oh, you're very sweet. I appreciate that. And I'm always very huggable too. So,
Well, next time I come by through Notre Dame, I'll look you up.
yeah, I actually live in Orlando, but I go up 4 or 5 times a year for class, and the rest of the time is virtual. But yeah, I look forward to hopefully running into both of you in person sometime.
Great. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, listeners, for being part of this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. Please visit www.marcusengel.com for all of your keynote speaking needs, healthcare consulting, books, etc. And we will see you all next time on the next episode of Compassion and Courage.